The Torellian Collective had spent the better part of 3,000 years perfecting what they called the Universal Safety Standard, which was essentially a very long-winded way of saying they had become professionally paranoid. After witnessing no fewer than 47 different species accidentally blow themselves up, poison their own atmospheres, or declare war on their reflections, the collective decided that perhaps the galaxy needed some adult supervision. Thus was born the most bureaucratic, over-regulated, frustratingly comprehensive safety system ever devised by sentient beings who had way too much time on their appendages. Every planet, every species, every rock floating in the cosmic void received a hazard classification. Category 1 was reserved for places like Melawan 5, where the most dangerous thing was accidentally sitting on a particularly squishy fruit. Category 10 was for hellscapes like the neutron star systems, where physics went to have nervous breakdowns. Earth, that peculiar little blue marble in an unfashionable arm of the galaxy, had been classified as Category 9 hazardous, which was roughly equivalent to labeling a star mildly warm or a black hole somewhat grabby. The reasoning was sound if you were the sort of being who enjoyed having your sense of security systematically destroyed. Earth had carnivorous plants, carnivorous animals, animals that looked cute but were actually carnivorous, weather patterns that threw tantrums with the destructive force of small nuclear weapons, and diseases that evolved faster than most species could say quarantine protocol. Oh, and the dominant species had figured out how to split atoms before they figured out how to be nice to each other. Classic Deathworlder behavior. But the real kicker was not what Earth had. It was what Earth made. Humans. Those bipedal chaos engines had clawed their way to the top of their food chain through sheer spite and an alarming refusal to acknowledge when they were outmatched. They were the sort of species that looked at an apex predator and thought, I bet I could ride that. Or saw a mountain and decided it needed climbing because it was there. As if geographic features had personally offended them. Station Kepler 186 represented the pinnacle of collective training facilities. It orbited a pleasant Class G star, far from any Deathworld influences, and boasted state-of-the-art combat simulation chambers, medical bays that could revive you from almost anything short of complete molecular dissolution, and a cafeteria that served over 300 different species' dietary requirements without poisoning anyone. Well, mostly without poisoning anyone. There had been that incident with the Glorbian exchange student and the Earth condiment labeled hot sauce, but they did not talk about that anymore. The facility's crown jewel was Training Room 7, a marvel of holographic projection, force field technology, and adaptable environmental controls that could simulate everything from zero-gravity asteroid fields to the crushing depths of a methane ocean. It had cost approximately the GDP of a small solar system and could supposedly handle anything the galaxy could throw at it. The designers had been very proud when they tested it against a simulated supernova. The room survived. The designers' egos did not when someone pointed out that no trainee would ever need to fight a supernova. But that was beside the point. Commander Vexillar stood in the observation deck, his compound eyes whirring as they focused on the personnel file displayed before him. He was Zethian, which meant he resembled what would happen if a praying mantis and an aristocrat had a child who went to too many leadership seminars. His exoskeleton gleamed with the kind of polish that suggested either extreme professionalism or a stress grooming habit. Given current circumstances, probably both. Explain to me again, he clicked, his translator rendering his mandible speech into flat, disappointed galactic standard. Why we accepted a human into our program. Dr. Thum rippled apologetically. The Valaran physician was essentially a 3-meter-tall pile of translucent gel that had achieved sentience and a medical degree, in that order. They changed colors when experiencing strong emotions, and right now they were cycling through shades of embarrassed purple. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee suggested that we were being speciesist in our admission requirements. There was a strongly worded letter, several strongly worded letters, a petition with over 40,000 signatures. They called us cowards, added Security Chief Kiranella, preening her violet feathers with one wing while manipulating a datapad with the other. The Avics were bird-like, elegant, and possessed the kind of passive-aggressive communication style that could make a diplomat weep. In 17 different languages, simultaneously, it was actually quite impressive. Vexillar's antennae drooped. So we caved to social pressure. We acknowledged the validity of providing equal opportunities to all sentient species, regardless of their planet of origin's hazard classification. Thum corrected, turning a defensive orange. There is a difference. Is there, though? Kirella's head tilted at an angle that suggested she already knew the answer and was enjoying watching others arrive at the same conclusion. The human in question, one Mira Chen, had arrived 3 standard weeks ago and had already accumulated an incident report file thick enough to be classified as a weapon in some jurisdictions. Nothing malicious, the report stressed. Just concerning. Deeply, profoundly concerning. Week 1, Day 2. Mira had helped in the kitchen by suggesting modifications to the food preparation equipment. The head chef, a Krillian with 20 years of experience, had politely declined. Mira had shrugged and made something she called a sandwich, using ingredients that should not have been compatible. 3 staff members had tried it. All 3 admitted it was delicious. None of them could explain why they felt simultaneously proud and afraid. Week 1, Day 5. During a standard physical assessment, Mira had been asked to run a simple endurance course. She had completed it in record time, then asked if she could actually try something challenging. When informed that the course was calibrated for elite soldiers, she had nodded politely and mentioned something about it being like gym class but with more steps. The instructor had filed a report less about her performance and more about the disturbing casualness with which she regarded our most difficult trials. Week 2, Day 3. Mira had befriended the station's maintenance AI by teaching it something called sarcasm. The AI now responded to maintenance requests with comments like, "Oh, sure, I will get right on that, because I have nothing better to do than fix your broken replicator for the 5th time this week, Kevin." The programming team was split between horror and admiration. Kevin from Deck 9 was not amused. Week 2, Day 7. A medical scan revealed that Mira's bone density was alarming. Her muscle composition was improbable, and her cardiovascular system operated at efficiency levels that made the medical equipment question its own programming. Dr. Thum had spent 6 hours recalibrating their instruments, convinced they were malfunctioning. They were not malfunctioning. Humans were just built like that. Week 3, Day 1. Mira had participated in her first combat simulation. She was paired against a Level 2 drone, standard procedure for new recruits. She had disabled it in 14 seconds, using a move that the combat database did not have a name for, because nobody had ever thought to try it before. When asked to describe her technique, she called it Tuesday. But the incident that had prompted this emergency meeting happened Week 3, Day 4, when Mira had casually mentioned during breakfast that the station's orbital mechanics were a bit off, and that they might want to check the stabilizers. Engineering had laughed. Then they checked. She was right. The stabilizers had been degrading for months, but so gradually that the automated systems had not flagged it. When asked how she noticed, Mira had said she felt a tiny wobble and thought she should mention it. A human had sensed something that their most advanced instruments had missed while eating cereal. She is too competent, Vexillar stated flatly. This is somehow worse than if she were incompetent. The other trainees are intimidated, Kirnella added, scrolling through more reports. Raxton asked to be transferred to a different cohort. When pressed for reasons, he said, and I quote, "She smiled at me, and I felt like prey." Raxton is from a warrior culture. His species fought their way to space travel. He has faced down armed insurgents without flinching. She smiled at him, Thum repeated, turning a contemplative teal. A gesture of friendliness and openness in human culture. Yes, but they have forward-facing eyes and visible teeth, Kirnella countered. Do you know what every other species with forward-facing eyes and visible teeth is in this galaxy? A predator, every single one. She is essentially bearing her hunting appendages at people as a greeting. It is biologically terrorizing. Vexillar's mandibles clicked in what might have been a sigh. We cannot simply dismiss her without cause. The political implications would be catastrophic. Earth has been pushing for greater integration with the collective, and rejecting their candidate would set back diplomatic relations by decades. What if? Kirnella began, her tone taking on the carefully casual quality of someone proposing something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. She failed on her own merits. The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the station's life support and the faint gurgling sound that Thum made when thinking. Elaborate, Vexillar said slowly. Training room 7. We schedule her for an overnight endurance evaluation. Standard protocol for advanced candidates, which technically she qualifies for given her performance metrics. We set the difficulty to level 3, which is challenging but not impossible. We observe her performance. If she succeeds, we have quantifiable data proving her capabilities and no grounds for dismissal. If she struggles, calls for extraction, or requires assistance, we have clear evidence that she may not be ready for the program and suggest remedial training or perhaps a transfer to a less intensive curriculum. That is remarkably reasonable, Thum observed, turning a surprised yellow. I was expecting something more ethically questionable. Oh, I am not done. Kirnella's eyes glittered with something that might have been mischief or might have been a calculated gambit. Either way, it was very on brand. We do not tell her it is a test. We frame it as a standard evaluation that all candidates undergo. Completely routine. If she panics or demands release, it reveals a psychological vulnerability. Humans are supposed to be social creatures who suffer in isolation, correct? Surely one night alone in a locked training room will be adequately stressful. Vexillar's antennae perked up. The training room has 47 cameras, full sensor coverage, and an AI monitoring system. We will have complete documentation of her performance. Plus, Kirnella continued, warming to her theme, if something goes wrong, we can intervene immediately. The room has multiple fail-safes, emergency shutdown protocols, and a manual override on the door locks. It is completely safe. Famous last words throughout history have often started with variations of, "It is completely safe." This moment was no exception. I will prepare the evaluation parameters, Thum said, shifting to a determined green. Standard overnight, endurance test, 12 hours, level 3 difficulty. Combat drones, environmental challenges, puzzle scenarios. Nothing she cannot handle with proper training and focus. I will ensure all monitoring systems are functioning at peak capacity, Kirnella added. We will have every angle covered. And I will file the appropriate paperwork, Vexlar finished, already dreading the forms. If this succeeds, we have our documentation. If it fails, we have our exit strategy. Either way, by tomorrow morning, we will have a resolution. None of them questioned whether they were being entirely ethical. None of them wondered if perhaps locking a human in a room overnight might be playing with fire. None of them considered that if something did go wrong, they would be entirely responsible. They would have plenty of time for such thoughts later. Approximately 12 hours worth, in fact. Mira Chen received the notification at 1800 hours station time. An overnight endurance evaluation in Training Room 7, beginning at 2100 hours, concluding at 0900 hours the next morning. Standard procedure for advanced candidates. Please report with comfortable athletic attire and any personal items required for a 12-hour session. Meals and water provided via standard dispensers. Difficulty level 3. Questions could be directed to the command staff. She read it twice, shrugged, and went to pack a bag. At 20:55 hours, Mira stood in the entry corridor of Training Room 7, wearing what humans called workout clothes, which looked alarmingly similar to what other species wore to bed, suggesting that humans either took their exercise very casually or their sleep very seriously. She carried a small bag with extra clothes, toiletries, and a datapad loaded with books. She looked, if anything, mildly excited. You understand the parameters? Vexlar asked, trying to sound official rather than guilty. 12 hours, level 3 difficulty, just a standard eval. Mira confirmed, flashing that smile that made prey animals nervous. Honestly sounds fun. I have been waiting to really test this facility. The basic courses are nice, but they are kind of easy, you know? Nobody knew. Level 3 was not supposed to be easy. Level 3 had made seasoned veterans weep. Well then, Vexlar gestured toward the door with one forearm. Best of luck. Thanks, Mira said cheerfully, and walked through the doorway. The door sealed behind her with a hiss that sounded significantly more ominous in retrospect. In the observation room, 3 beings settled in for what they assumed would be an enlightening night. Multiple screens showed every angle of Training Room 7. Mira stood in the center, looking around with interest as the room hummed to life around her. Holographic environments loaded. Combat drones emerged from their charging stations. The AI announced in a pleasant voice that the evaluation would begin in 60 seconds. All cameras functioning, Kirnella confirmed. Biometric monitors active, Thum added. Her heart rate is slightly elevated, but well within human normal. She appears calm. Beginning level 3 protocols, Vexlar initiated the sequence. The room transformed. What had been a simple gray chamber became a multi-tiered obstacle course complete with moving platforms, simulated environmental hazards, and 3 combat drones programmed for level 3 engagement patterns. Not trying to kill her, obviously. Just providing enough challenge to test her reflexes, problem-solving, and endurance. Mira watched the transformation with the kind of expression usually reserved for children entering theme parks. Then she started stretching. Not panicking, not assessing threats, not developing a tactical approach. Stretching, slow, methodical stretches that suggested she was warming up for a workout rather than preparing for a grueling test. Is that normal? Vexlar asked. For humans? Possibly. Thum replied, their colors shifting to uncertain beige. They have an odd relationship with physical stress. Something about lactic acid and voluntary discomfort being enjoyable. That is deranged, Kirella muttered. The AI announced that the evaluation had begun. Mira finished stretching, rolled her shoulders, and approached the first combat drone with the casual confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Which, given that she was from a Deathworld, she probably had. The drone initiated a Level 3 attack pattern, which involved quick strikes, defensive positioning, and adaptive responses. She disabled it in 22 seconds, not through brutal force or overwhelming aggression, but through efficient, practiced movements that suggested extensive training and a fundamental understanding of mechanical systems. She found the drone's weak point, exploited it, and moved on while the observers were still processing what happened. "Well," Thum said slowly. "That was fast." Level 3 drones are supposed to provide at least 5 minutes of engagement for advanced fighters, Kirella said, checking her console. She just speedran it like she was bored. Camera 12 just flickered, Vexlar noted, frowning at one screen. Probably a minor glitch. Kirella dismissed it. These systems have redundancies. Keep watching. They watched. Mira moved through the obstacle course like water finding the path of least resistance. Where other candidates struggled with the platforms, she flowed. Where others treated it as a test of strength, she treated it as a puzzle. And she was very, very good at puzzles. 30 minutes in, she had completed what should have taken 2 hours. 45 minutes in, camera 23 went offline. "That is not a glitch," Vexlar stated. "Check the system." Kirella's wings ruffled as she ran diagnostics. "I am getting error codes, but they do not make sense. It is like something is interfering with the signal. But there is nothing in the room that could do that." On the remaining cameras, Mira had found the control panel for the room's difficulty settings. She stood in front of it, head tilted, studying the interface with the kind of focus that made the observers collectively nervous. "She cannot access that," Vexlar said. "The controls are encrypted and locked to command staff only." Mira pulled a small tool from her bag, something that looked distressingly like a universal bypass device. "Why does she have that?" Kirinella demanded. "More importantly, how does she have that?" Thum added, turning alarmed red. "Those are restricted technology." "She is from Earth," Vexlar said weakly. "They probably sell them at retail stores next to the bread and milk." Mira connected the device, worked on the panel for approximately 3 minutes while 3 observers held their collective breath. Then the panel chimed happily, and the room's difficulty setting changed. From level 3 to level 7. "Abort," Vexlar said immediately. "Abort the test. That difficulty will kill her." Kirinella jabbed at her controls. "Door override is not responding. She did something to the lock mechanism." "What do you mean she did something? How could she possibly do something?" Vexlar's voice had risen to a pitch that suggested imminent panic. "Open it manually." "The manual override requires someone to physically go to the door and use the emergency release," Kirella explained, already moving. "I am going now." On screen, Level 7 protocols activated. The number of combat drones tripled. The environmental hazards intensified. The obstacle course restructured itself into something that looked like a death trap designed by a committee of sadists with advanced engineering degrees. Mira looked around at the chaos she had just unleashed, cracked her knuckles, and smiled. Then she got to work. What followed could only be described as a masterclass in controlled chaos. The Level 7 drones, programmed with advanced combat algorithms and tactical coordination, swarmed her position. She moved through them like they were standing still, and perhaps to her augmented human reflexes, they were. A spinning kick disabled two simultaneously. A jumping strike took out a third. She grabbed a fourth, used it as a shield against the others, then threw it hard enough that it collided with three more in a cascading mechanical pileup. That should not be possible, Thum whispered, their entire mass turning shocked white. Those drones weigh 40 kilograms each. She just threw one like it was a ball. Earth is a high-gravity world, Vexlar managed. She is probably stronger than our baseline calculations accounted for. Camera 8 went dark. Then camera 15. Then cameras 3, 18, and 27 in rapid succession. The system is failing. Kiernella's voice crackled over the comm from outside training room 7. I am at the door. Emergency override is not working. It is like it has been fused shut from the inside. I am calling for engineering support. On the remaining screens, Mira had discovered that one of the environmental hazards included a portion of the floor that could superheat to simulate volcanic conditions. She was using it to disable drones by luring them over it and watching their circuits fry. It was tactical. It was efficient. It was absolutely terrifying to watch someone be that comfortable with simulated lava. Hour 3 arrived with an announcement from the AI that would haunt everyone involved for years to come. Trainee has achieved level 7 completion benchmarks. Excellent performance. Would trainee like to advance to level 8? No, Vexlar said to the empty observation room. No, thank you. I am good. Mira's voice came through the speakers, slightly out of breath but cheerful. Actually, wait, sure. Why not? I am already here. No, Vexlar repeated louder, as if volume could somehow influence events currently outside his control. Level 8 activated. More cameras died. The ones that remained showed footage that would later be described as concerning, impossible, and physically implausible. Mira had apparently decided that the training room's climbing walls were actually just suggestions. She scaled surfaces that should not have been scalable. She jumped distances that violated several conservative estimates of human physical limitations. She somehow, and this was the part that would haunt the review board, turned the Level 8 environmental hazard protocols into an advantage. Hour 5 brought a new development. One of the combat drones, a Level 8 model with advanced learning algorithms, appeared to have stopped trying to tag Mira and started following her around. When she moved to a new section, it moved with her. When she disabled other drones, it watched. When she sat down to drink from her water bottle, it hovered nearby like an attentive pet. Did she just befriend a combat drone? Thum asked the universe at large. The universe, busy with other matters, did not respond. The door to Training Room 7 continued to resist all attempts at opening. Engineering had arrived with cutting tools. The door, constructed from enhanced alloy designed to withstand orbital bombardment, mocked their efforts. Behind it, muffled sounds of combat and the occasional mechanical crash suggested that Mira was having what humans might call a great time. Hour 8. The observation room had gone quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when everyone is simultaneously experiencing the same existential crisis. Of the original 47 cameras, 11 remained functional. They showed a training room that looked less like a pristine facility and more like a creative person had been given advanced technology and asked to redecorate on a theme of organized chaos. The obstacle course had been completely rearranged. Mira had apparently decided that the original layout was not challenging enough, so she had moved things. How she moved things that were magnetically locked to the floor was unclear and probably involved either advanced physics or sheer spite, possibly both. The combat drones were arranged in neat rows along one wall, powered down, all 27 of them, including the one she had befriended, which sat slightly apart from the others, like it was special. Which, given that it had survived befriending a human, it was. The environmental hazards had been disabled through some combination of technical skill and what the engineering team would later describe as creative violence. And Mira Chen, Deathworlder, destroyer of training protocols, was asleep. She had taken several of the safety cables meant for securing equipment, fashioned them into a hammock suspended between two support pillars, and was sleeping soundly despite the facility's emergency lights flashing because someone had tried to override the room's lockdown and failed. On one of the remaining functional screens, a note was visible, written on the room's smart surface display wall in neat handwriting. Room feedback. Really fun setup. Some suggestions. The Level 7 drones have a predictable attack pattern after the first 30 seconds. Might want to randomize that more. The environmental hazards are great, but the heat distribution on the volcanic floor section is uneven. Could be more challenging. Also, the magnetic locks on the obstacle equipment are rated for 500 kilos, but I think they might be wearing out. Might want to check those. Overall, 810. Would train again. Thanks for the opportunity, MC. Below that, she had added, P.S. I know this was a test. It is fine, I get it. New species and all. No hard feelings. But maybe just ask next time. Also, I made breakfast from the emergency rations if anyone wants some. I think I made enough for everyone. Dawn broke over Station Kepler 186, and with it came the moment of reckoning. Engineering had finally managed to override the door through a combination of advanced techniques and giving up on subtlety in favor of a plasma cutter. The door slid open with a hiss that sounded like the universe sighing in relief. Vexlar, Thum, and Kernella stood at the entrance, flanked by security personnel, medical staff, and an engineering team armed with fire suppression equipment just in case. The training room was quiet, peaceful even. The emergency lights had been disabled. The few remaining functional cameras showed the space transformed into something that resembled less a combat simulation facility and more the extremely organized disaster zone. Mira's hammock swayed gently in the air circulation. She was deeply asleep, still wearing her workout clothes, one arm draped over the side, the very picture of someone who had just completed a moderately challenging exercise session rather than someone who had just survived what should have been a punishing 12-hour endurance test. The smart surface wall displayed her note in the morning light, cheerful and helpful and absolutely, undeniably proof that she had known exactly what they were doing. Medical assessment? Thum said quietly, moving forward with scanning equipment. 2 minutes of careful, silent scanning later. She is fine. Better than fine. Her vitals are excellent. Well hydrated, well rested, no signs of stress or injury. She is healthier now than when she started. The footage. Vexlar turned to Kirella. Tell me we at least have the footage. We need to know what happened in here. Kirella had been working on her datapad since the door opened. Her feathers had progressively drooped as she worked. Now she looked up with the expression of someone who has just watched their entire career flash before their eyes and found it wanting. The footage is corrupted, all of it. Every camera, every backup server, every redundant system. It is not deleted. Deletion leaves traces. It is corrupted in a way that our technical team says should not be possible without physical access to hardware that is located in sealed, secured locations throughout the station. The data is there, but it is completely unrecoverable. Even the AI monitoring logs are filled with error codes that do not correspond to anything in our database. How? Vexlar managed. The technical team says it would require someone with extensive knowledge of our systems, access to specialized equipment, and approximately 8 hours of focused effort to accomplish this level of comprehensive data corruption. They all turned to look at the sleeping human in the hammock. She was in here for 12 hours, Thum said slowly. Locked in. Alone. With our combat drones, Kirella added. And our cameras, Vexlar finished. And she made breakfast, a new voice added. They turned to find one of the security personnel, a young Zethian named Klix, holding a plate with something on it that actually looked and smelled appealing. It is really good. How did she make emergency rations taste like actual food? The question hung in the air, unanswered and probably unanswerable. Mira chose that moment to wake up. She stretched, yawned, and blinked at the crowd assembled at the entrance with the casual surprise of someone who had just woken up from a pleasant nap to discover they had company. Morning, she said brightly, untangling herself from the hammock with practiced ease. Did you guys want breakfast? I made plenty. I was not sure how many people would be here for the debrief. Debrief, Vexlar repeated weakly. You know, the thing you do after evaluations to discuss performance and areas for improvement? Mira dropped lightly to the floor, landing with a grace that made it clear the night's activities had not tired her in the slightest. I left notes on the wall, but I figured we should probably talk through everything in detail. I had some ideas about optimizing the training protocols. She had ideas about optimizing their training protocols. The protocols developed over decades by experts from across the galaxy. The footage is corrupted, Kirnella said, because someone had to address the massive cybernetic elephant in the room. Oh no, Mira said, with precisely the amount of surprise one uses when told something they already knew. That is unfortunate. Technical glitch, maybe? These things happen with complex systems. I hope it does not cause too much trouble. She knew. They knew she knew. She knew they knew she knew. And she was standing there with a pleasant smile, offering breakfast, daring them to prove anything. You are officially accepted into the program, Vexlar heard himself say. Because what else could he say? Full status. No probationary period. Awesome. Mira's smile widened. Thank you for the opportunity. This is going to be great. She walked past them, carrying her bag and a plate of impossibly edible emergency rations, and paused at the door. Oh, and the room is going to need some maintenance. Nothing serious, just some wear and tear. Normal use stuff. I left a detailed list on the secondary display panel. Have a great day, everyone. And then she was gone, leaving behind a training room that looked like a physics violation, 27 disabled combat drones, 11 functioning cameras out of 47, corrupted footage that would spawn investigation committees for months, and 3 alien administrators who were simultaneously impressed, terrified, and deeply uncertain about their life choices. The investigation took 6 weeks. Teams of technical experts examined every centimeter of Training Room 7, interviewed everyone involved, and attempted to recover the footage using every technique known to galactic science. In the end, they produced a report that was mostly composed of variations on, "We have no idea how this happened," with a side of, "Please do not make us explain this to our supervisors." Training Room 7 was declared undergoing maintenance and sealed pending a complete system overhaul. This was partly because it needed actual maintenance, and partly because nobody wanted to risk whatever lingering Deathworld energy Mira had left in there. Mira herself continued through the training program with exemplary performance. Other students gave her a respectful amount of space, which she seemed to find amusing. Instructors approached teaching her with the kind of cautious enthusiasm usually reserved for handling unstable explosives that might also give you helpful suggestions. The combat drone she had befriended was retired from active service and sent to a technical museum, where it became a popular exhibit. Its plaque read, "Level 8 Combat Drone, first recorded instance of autonomous tactical reassessment in the presence of a Deathworlder, somehow survived the experience. Commander Vexillar received a commendation for successfully integrating the program's first human candidate. He accepted it with the gracious professionalism of someone who knew exactly how little he had actually contributed to that success, and how much had been pure survival instinct. Dr. Thum published a paper titled Physiological and Psychological Resilience, Patterns in Terran Species, Why Everything We Thought We Knew Was Wrong. It won several awards and spawned an entire academic subfield. Security Chief Kirinella updated the station's security protocols. The new manual included a section titled Special Considerations for Deathworld Species that was essentially 40 pages of do not lock them in rooms overnight and expect conventional results. And somewhere in the archives of Station Kepler 186, in a sealed file marked Classified, Do Not Distribute, Seriously, Just Don't, there existed a single uncorrupted image that somehow survived the great footage corruption. It showed Mira Chen, suspended in her improvised hammock, fast asleep with a slight smile, while 27 combat drones stood arranged in neat rows like students at attention. And every surface of Training Room 7 gleamed with the kind of organization that suggested someone had spent their evening not panicking, but instead practicing what humans called stress cleaning. Below the image, someone had written in shaky text, "They told us Earth was Category 9 hazardous. They were wrong. It should have been Category 10, not because of what the planet has, because of what it makes." And beneath that, in different handwriting, someone else had added, "She made breakfast, though. It was really good." The Tyrellian Collective updated their universal safety standards 3 months later. Earth remained Category 9 hazardous, but humans received a special designation all their own. Exercise caution. Species classified as friendly, but statistically improbable. Do not challenge directly. Definitely do not lock in rooms overnight. If offered food, accept graciously. They are trying their best. It was the longest designation in the entire safety manual. Nobody complained. The manual had been written by committee, refined through centuries of experience, and tested against the most dangerous phenomena the galaxy had to offer. It had not been tested against a single bored human with 12 hours to kill and access to a training room. Some things, it turned out, you could not plan for. You could only survive them, document them, and hope that next time someone suggested testing a Deathworlder's limits, somebody would remember what happened to Training Room 7 and the footage that erased itself. And if anyone ever asked Mira Chen what actually happened that night, she would smile with all her forward-facing eye predator glory and say, "Just a standard evaluation, nothing special." Though I did have some really good ideas about improving those drone attack patterns, if anyone wants to hear them. Nobody ever asked. Some mysteries were better left unsolved, especially when the solution involved admitting that a single human had outsmarted an entire space station's worth of advanced technology while simultaneously reorganizing a combat training facility and making breakfast. The universe, vast and ancient and full of wonders, continued spinning. Earth continued producing humans. And somewhere on Station Kepler 186, Training Room 7 sat in darkness, waiting for the day someone would be brave or foolish enough to use it again. That day has not come yet. Perhaps it never will. Some rooms, once touched by Deathworld chaos, are best left as monuments to hubris and the eternal truth that no safety protocol, no matter how comprehensive, can fully account for human creativity, adaptability, and the concerning ease with which they can turn any situation into an opportunity for improvement. Also, the breakfast really was very good. That part of the